All right. All right. As it says during the course of one of my favorite songs, oh, yeah. All right. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Here we are with a Friday night live stream. We don't do too many of these, but yeah, I love the live streams more than anything. I love the live streams more than anything. Checking out the live chat, conversing with you on the phone, 860-325-3687, and hang on with the phone calls. Hang on. With the phone calls. Give me about 3 or 4 minutes. 860-325-3687. I'll put the number in the live chat. And yes, I have a trip out of town, and then I need to order. Yes, we'll get going on all the things that I've promised for a number of times. A better camera for a better shot, a better microphone. The lighting should be fine, but it can be better. I just need to position it better. And I'm forgetting something. Oh, because it has to do with the live stream is to, yes, this is going to take a little bit of a while, even though I'm going to purchase it immediately, is going to be the software to do the production the way it's going to look nice and have the phone number on the screen and be able to show sponsorships, because sponsors are just beating down the doors here at the Voice of College Football to jump on board. No, they're not. But I am getting some sponsorship offers that need to come through. Welcome, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And I need to settle down a little bit. I'm a little bit amped up, a little bit hyped up. Yeah, a little bit hyped up. All right. Got a lot to talk about. And again, hang on for the phone calls. I will give you the sign. I want to check out the live chat and first address a few things. So, as you know, you can help build the channel if you shop on Amazon. I will be shopping on Amazon in a few days to purchase the camera, the lights, the microphone, and anything else that goes along with it. I think I'm going to purchase 2 cameras, actually, because I would like to have a close-up shot like we have here, but also back it up and get a full shot of the set. And it's going to take a learning curve for me to organize all of this and be able to use the cameras and the functionality of them in sync, and then also the production software that I need to purchase. But I'm going to do that by going to the Amazon link in the description section below is how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to help build my own channel. So what basically happens is, to give you some insight, depending on what you purchase at Amazon, different items bring and yield different percentages. I don't know what those are. Electronics versus clothing versus household items, they're all different. But anywhere from maybe 0.5% to 3%, something in that range, comes to me, comes to the channel, comes to build the channel. And so that's your contribution. Doesn't cost you an extra penny, but because it's an Amazon affiliate, we are here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Again, if you've got somebody in your household that does the shopping through Amazon, if it's not you, get them that link, please. And that helps build the channel. All right, so we get the Amazon promo out of the way. Also, the newsletter, The Voice of College Football. Yes, there has not been one released for maybe 2 months. We were consistent throughout the college football season, weeks 1 through 15, and through the championship game. And that is still an integral part of what we do, and it has to be. The newsletter to about 90 of you that, again, was consistent for about 17 weeks, but we've only released one since the season ended. It was my intent to release it every Monday, even during the off season. I probably should have backed that off to every other week. It has just been difficult for me to put thoughts together in delivering something of value. I could throw out a newsletter every week. It wouldn't take me too much time, just to let you know, here's what's coming up on the channel. But as many of you know that subscribe to the newsletter, and it costs nothing, so the subscription is nothing, who have signed up for the newsletter, I took great pride in providing information, stats, facts, and trends that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Not that you wouldn't find one of them or 10 of them in other places. Of course, I had to find them in other places, but there was nowhere you could find that entire collection of 50 or 60 statistics, facts, and trends that I would deliver each and every week during the college football season right there. So stats, facts, and trends, a channel update, and also my take, my perspective on the weekend of college football. So this is still a very important thing. So for those of you who did sign up for the newsletter, and many of you before the season started, many of you near the end of the season, so you've only seen 3 or 4 of the newsletters, The Voice of College Football, hang tight. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your loyalty, and it will pay off in the newsletter. The newsletter is coming back. It will be there. Just something that I haven't prioritized in favor of all the content you get, which is about 150 to 160 videos per month. Who else does that? Who else does that? 150 videos a month. That's probably on a slow month. The audio. So obviously you guys are watching me on YouTube. You watch the videos, you watch the live streams. Just in case you would like to have access to the audio, you're not going to get quite as much audio as you do the videos here. And one of the reasons why is because it's just not necessarily a priority, number one. Number two, I don't want to flood the audio platforms. I've heard that you don't want to be releasing 3 or 4 audio podcasts per day. So I've tried to keep it at 1 per day, maybe 2. So I try to take the best of for the most part. And I release those audio podcasts on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. All right. So I want to address this before I take any phone calls. So again, hang on to the phone calls. We will take plenty of phone calls. 860-325-3687. Okay. I released a video about 2 hours ago. And for any of those of you who are watching currently that watched the video and paid attention, there were 2 segments. So I had an intro, and then I had my rollout with the music and so forth going into the video content of me reacting to viewer comments from the last week. And you could tell that they were shot at 2 different times. So what happened was I shot the viewer comment reacts to be posted on Patreon. So if you listen to the beginning of that, that was intended for our folks on Patreon. And then I had some issues uploading that to Patreon. I know exactly why. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to just post it on YouTube, but then cut an intro to let all of you know what we're going to do here. So there is always going to be tons of content here on YouTube at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, and on my Miami channel, and on the Ohio State and USC channels. And we've got a Florida State channel. We've got a Florida State channel that has increased exponentially in the last couple of weeks. We launched it a couple of weeks ago. It's gone from 0 subscribers to 2. Exponential, infinite growth. So I wasn't expecting a whole lot. I haven't done anything with it yet, but there are videos of Florida State football content there. So here's the point with the Patreon situation is that we are going to have a great time at Patreon. We would love for you to take part of our community, be part of the team at Patreon. Yes. As I explained to Dalton, I would love it if Dalton was on the line with us right now. I don't know that he is. I'll check out the live chat in a second. But Dalton, if you're out there, just let me know that you're on the live chat. Because Dalton raised an issue that a few of you have in the past, that Dalton just doesn't have it right now to give on Patreon. So I cannot explain to you, I cannot properly get it across to you how much I hate, despise, detest. When I say the word despise, it takes me back to my first professional interview when I interviewed. I didn't know I was being interviewed. It was an informal conversation with the general manager and station owner that I was being interviewed for a news anchor position. And they asked me about news. And I said I despised it because I was a sports guy. Anyway, that came to mind. I despise asking for money, but this is part of the deal. I don't have Dick's Sporting Goods or someone like that sponsoring me, giving me $1 million a year, and a number of other outlets to provide and build a channel, to pay me, and to do all the things that we would like to do to make this a better product. So look at the videos. Look at the videos. Kudos to you for watching from a aesthetic standpoint, from a production quality standpoint, for somebody who's worked in the industry. I will say it humbly, at the highest level, at the international network level, for most of my 28 to 29 years, 27 years in the business. From an aesthetic quality standpoint, these videos, production quality, graphics, all that crap. From that standpoint, for you guys to cut through all that, no bells and whistles, and for you guys to be able to cut through that and find the quality, kudos to you. You guys are hardcore college football fans that can recognize quality, can recognize in-depth analysis and discussion, debate, and what we do here, thanks to you with your engagement. But I would like to add that that would a lot of people need that to stick around. They need the entertainment value. I'd like to provide more entertainment, and a lot of people need that initially to be drawn in. So the production quality has been garbage. I understand that. It's been my attempt from day one just to provide content. I have gone 100 miles an hour content and 1 mile an hour on the production side. So we would like to increase that. So the point I'm getting at is that this is a necessary evil for me to ask for money. If you watch me on a regular basis, you know that our discussion, debate, analysis ratio versus the promotional aspect is like 100 to 1. So I'm cranking out live streams and videos every day, as you guys will know, and barely mentioning for 15 or 20 seconds how you can help us build the channel. So I'm doing that right now. And so Dalton commented, and again, I hope Dalton's on the live chat. I'll check in just a second because he raised just something that I've addressed a couple times, but I want to make it very clear that I appreciate your contribution in whatever form it is. I say that in all honesty. Everything I say in this chair, I'm being completely honest about. So I shouldn't have to state that, and I will not do that in the future. You've never heard me say that in the past. In all honesty, you always have to watch out for people when they state that. You're wondering, okay, what do you state that's not honest? So I can't imagine another time that I've ever stated that, but I just wanted to emphasize that your contributions are appreciated and cherished regardless of the form in which they come. Comments to the channel, likes, I would hope that it would start with a like. Give me a like, even if you don't like me, even if you don't agree with my particular analysis on that video. If you think what we're doing here is of value to the college football community, the Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football community, that's you, then give me a like on the videos. That helps build the channel. It works up those YouTube algorithms, gets them circulating in some way that I don't really understand. But they like the likes, the comments. We did an Ohio State video last week with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts. It's nearing 18,000 views. And at last glance, it was well over 500 comments. If we could get to the point where we're cranking out videos with 15 to 20,000 views per, on average, 40,000, 10,000, 35,000, 12,000, then we'll have something. But 500 comments, that's great. Love it. I don't know where that video went besides Bucknuts. I believe somebody else must have picked it up, I'm guessing. And that's happened in the past, and my videos have drawn well and increased in viewership because some other platform picked them up, and that's apparently what happened there. I would love to see that happen more and more. That's another way in which you can help us build the channel, is share the videos. We are going to talk college football. Give me just a second. So share the videos as well. In particular, if you know that most of the people on your Facebook or your Twitter feed are Florida State fans. You're a Florida State fan. You talk to Florida State people. When we talk Florida State, and we did Wednesday night with James Coleman, I've got to release those videos. They're coming. Great discussion with James Coleman from fifth quarter college football the other night. Share the videos. That's one way you can help. And of course, you can help from a financial standpoint. So for many of you, you grab your cup of coffee from Starbucks every day and it costs $5. Just realize that you can join us on Patreon and help us build the channel. You can contribute to the super chat. There's a number of ways that you can help us. Use the Amazon link, of course, to do your Amazon shopping. And yes, the super chat is open, but in any way that you give, I want you to understand it is appreciated beyond what I can explain, beyond what I can describe and convey to you. It is cherished and appreciated. All right. I had mentioned also on the notifications tonight in the community section, I had contacted a few people directly. Then I thought this would be the best way to do it. I think you people know who you are. I could start a list, and if I start a list right now, I'll regret it because I'm going to leave so many people off. I'm going to go way back and grab a couple of old timers. Navy Thomas, NCIS Fanatic 21, to name just a couple. Yeah, if I start, I won't be able to finish, and I will leave people off that I don't want to leave off. But you know who you are. You know who you are, that you watch on a regular basis. You contribute with the likes and the comments and the phone calls and the contributions in the super chat and all of that. So if you're comfortable with it, I would like to get your take on something. And so therefore I asked in the community section, if you have yet to see it, go to the community section when you get a chance. Don't forget. And I'm simply asking there to go to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. So there's my email address, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And give me your contact information there. I would like to set up a phone call and ask you a couple questions. All right. On Wednesday night, I can't take a whole lot of credit for it because I just basically kicked back and listened. Cam Underwood from State of the U and Alonso 1219 tore it up. Really broke down the Miami football. Had a great time listening to them. So if you have yet to check out that discussion, even if you are not a Miami fan, go back and check out the video. Cue it up to where Zoe comes on to talk to Cam, and it's fun viewing. All right. Our schedule rankings are out. I need to catch up. I was going to release one per day. I'm slacking. I've posted number 70, 69, 68, 67, I believe, is coming out. I think I recorded that yesterday, and I've yet to post it. So I've got a long ways to go with the schedule rankings and the record projections. All right, let's talk college football. I'm going to go to the live chat. The phone lines are open, 860-325-3687. And I'm going to address, first and foremost, the comments that were made in response to my reaction to the viewer comments. Your response to my response of your response to the videos. All right, we got a phone call coming in, though. The call will start at the beep. All right, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It is Deep Barat. How's it going, Mark?
Well, I would say that if somebody held a gun to my head and said, your first call is coming in, who is it? I would say, Deep Barat. That would be my guess. That would have been my guess. So there you are.
Yes, I love your shows, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support, man.
You're like the only guy that, I mean, besides Uncle Lou, you're probably the only guy on college football YouTube that regularly has these lovely, informative videos and call-in sessions as well.
And I've got to apologize because sometimes I understand. So during the college football season, I don't know at what point you joined us. I nailed these on a regular basis. I had set times the entire week, and it's kind of broken down from a scheduling standpoint. So I know that hurts our numbers in terms of you guys coming in for these, because in particular tonight, I didn't know that I was going to be here, and I simply saw the reaction to the video that I posted just a couple hours ago and thought, you know what, let's strike up the live stream and address that, and then talk college football, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of very interesting things have happened in college football, I guess, since the last call-in show we had. What are your thoughts on, I don't know if you follow recruiting that much, but DJ Uiagalelei, I don't know how to pronounce his full name, number one quarterback in the class of 2020, and he's basically nailed it down to Oregon and Clemson. And if he picks, I mean, obviously, I don't know, he can go pick any school he wants, but my kind of thoughts and analysis are that if he picks Oregon, I genuinely believe that Oregon could be a championship contender in the next 2 to 3 years, especially with the recruiting class that they just landed. And if they land this particular kid, the number one QB in the class of 2020. And I know that Clemson is the heavy favorite for this particular dude, but the interesting thing is that this guy comes from a Polynesian background, and he lives in the state of California as well, which is known particularly to be a feeder. St. John Bosco is known to be a feeder into the Pac-12 schools, particularly Oregon being one of them. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen and it's going to be a massive turnaround, but he also met Marcus Mariota at the spring game, who's a big Polynesian quarterback. So similar kind of background, similar school, Pac-12 school, West Coast guy, gets to stay on the West Coast. But again, I'm just speculating a bunch of things. I think that it's going to be interesting to see where he commits on May 5th. And also the second point I want to make on recruiting is that there's this kid called Drew Sanders, who was the number 1 or number 2 athlete in the class of 2020. It's a hard Oklahoma committed very strongly for Oklahoma. And last week he took a visit to Tuscaloosa, and he just not randomly, but just immediately flipped to becoming an Alabama commit. And obviously that affected Oklahoma's recruiting class, but also I guess bolstered Alabama's, but it's a massive upset and a turnaround for Alabama to land Drew Sanders, and for him to be an athlete who's going to be playing defense now, previously to what he was. But both points I wanted to make, but the more important point, interesting point on May 5th is where DJU is going to go.
Okay, I got to tell you that I only listened to some of that just because I'm trying to monitor this crazy live chat. So I need a producer. I need a producer and an assistant. So anyway, all right. The first thing I'll say about the recruiting is that I'm not a recruiting guy. I know this is the worst thing that I could possibly say as a college football guy on a show like this. I don't care. I don't care until December, whatever the date is for the first National Signing Day, and for the first Wednesday in February. So I don't care. I don't find it interesting. It doesn't interest me at all. That said, I've got an obligation to keep up with it to a certain extent. So my obligation is that I keep up with the trends. I keep up with the teams. I don't keep up with the specific players. Yeah, you could show me the top 100 and I probably know about 75 of the names just from reading stuff. So I track it from that standpoint. So I'm interested in what you brought to the table about Oregon football and Oregon recruiting. And I'm intrigued by Mario Cristobal's approach and why he's gaining so much traction overall. When you point out this particular kid, I don't know anything about him. I've heard the name. But in regards to, yes, I can certainly follow your lead on Oregon football and having the number 2 recruiting class, if I remember correctly, 2 cycles ago when Mario Cristobal was just hired, and then having the number 1 class this past offseason in the Pac-12 and headed in that direction this offseason, and considering that they were that close to winning the Pac-12 this past season, that absolutely they could be a championship contender.
Not just a Pac-12 championship contender, like a national championship contender.
Sure. So that's an interesting. So we can make a dividing line there, I think. And I don't know what that is, but I do think that let's say Stanford wins the Pac-12 this year, and a number of other teams in the Power Five that win conference championships have, I don't want to say off seasons because they won a conference championship, but let's say Stanford gets into the playoff because there's some kind of chaos in the Big Ten and Ohio State wins at 9-3 or whatever. And so one of the conferences gets eliminated just because it's a logjam. That I would think the Big Ten would be the first candidate for that. And let's say, so we've got one conference eliminated. Notre Dame's not able to replicate what they did last season. Therefore, Stanford makes the playoff, and they're 11-2 after they win the Pac-12 championship game. The jump, as we noticed with Washington in 2016, and even though Ohio State was blasted worse than Washington, we know what Ohio State has brought to the table in other years and that they're a legit elite program, that it just felt as though Washington, even though they made the playoff, that particular team was good, but they were not nearly as good as the teams that were in the rest of the bracket. And I think that showed. They lost to USC, the best team on their schedule, by 2 touchdowns at home. So making the playoff and then being a threat to win the national championship and having to clear 2 behemoths, 2 giants in those 2 playoff games, that's, I think, a big leap for maybe the Pac-12 right now. So, yeah, I can see Oregon making it, but the odds of them winning 2 games and being a serious threat to win the whole thing, I think, is another leap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, I definitely believe that Oregon can do it. I'm not saying they will do it. They can do it. The reason I say that is because didn't they make the national? They did make the national championship game with, who was it? Mariota. That was in the college football playoff era too. They didn't win the playoff game. Matter of fact, I think they've done what the Big 12 hasn't. They've actually won a playoff game. But yeah, I mean, honestly, man, it's going to be very interesting to see. And also, I don't think Washington is going away anywhere either. Washington will always be a contender for the Pac-12 North, particularly with who's that? Running Sam Howard, who's the number 1 QB. So they have Eason for 2 years. Then you have Sam Howard in 2021, who's going to be the number 1 QB there. It's going to be a very big battle between Washington and Oregon in that division. Now, I think you're right. They don't have a strength of schedule. They don't have a strong Power 5 non-conference schedule that's going to merit a playoff spot if, let's say, they have a 1-loss or 2-loss record. But, I mean, for someone living on the West Coast like me, I think I'd like to see the Pac-12 team at least make a playoff because they don't obviously win. But that's just me. I mean, I don't think USC is coming back or being resurgent in the next 2 to 3 years either. But yeah, man, I mean, aside from that, I guess I'll let you handle other college. There's not a whole lot going on in the college football world.
And I do want to note that I think there's a considerable difference between the strength of the Pac-12 in 2014 when Oregon made the championship game in 2018 to 19. The conference has taken a bit of a dip.
Very much so. But I think a lot of that is the talent grab too. A lot of non-Pac-12 schools are recruiting California now. California is like the mecca of like Pac-12 recruiting. If you can't get kids from California, I mean, your conference is going to suck, particularly because that's what they've been relying on. And even then, right? I mean, a lot of these California recruits are now going. Like DJU is considering Clemson. That was unheard of back there. We landed Brew McCoy at Texas, and he was all USC. But I think that the cycle will change once, let's say, USC lands an elite coach and they rebuild their program. once, let's say, Oregon makes a college football playoff appearance, or Washington makes a run, or something magical happens, I do think that conference is going to rebuild itself. I don't think it's just going to stay very bad, at least in the near future after 2 years.
Well, there's only been one conference that I can remember over the last 25 to 30 years that has stayed bad for a considerable length of time, and that was the ACC pre-expansion. The ACC in the 1990s into the 2000s was pretty bad. It was just weak, but that was pre-Virginia Tech. That was pre-Virginia Tech, Miami, Boston College, Syracuse. Not that those teams did much for the conference at that point, but some of them did, like Virginia Tech and Miami, the Hokies to a large extent. But the ACC was so bad that Florida State just ran through that thing forever. They would win 25 and 28 consecutive conference games, in the span of 3 to 4 years. They wouldn't have anyone challenge them for a few years at a time in the 90s. But besides that, I can't think of a conference that's gone through a down cycle for more than 3 to 4 years. I didn't think that the Big 12, I knew that the Big 12 was not a good conference 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think it's improved pretty considerably. I don't think it's near the top, but it's very respectable now.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the coaching and the recruiting that previously was there and is now trying to be there. But again, the Big 12, just like you said it yourself, I think is that aside from Texas and Oklahoma, the entire conference is basically a bunch of fillers. I believe Oklahoma State had one good year in 2011.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I don't think that the TCU and Baylor, that's right, they tied. The Big 12 didn't have a championship game in 2014, so they weren't taking the first college football playoff. But I mean, teams like TCU and Baylor and Oklahoma State, they'll have one good year per decade. Maybe. We don't even know that, right? I mean, it's all Texas and Oklahoma. I don't even know. Do you know West Virginia? I mean, do they have any good years when they weren't in the Big 12? I don't.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll have to get you on here sometime, Deeper Rod, for everything that you know about what's going on right now. I'm going to have to give you a history lesson some night, or maybe a series of nights. So West Virginia football, so I can certainly speak to from the mid-'70s on, was a top 25 program. Consistently in the late 70s, early to mid-'80s, they played Notre Dame in the 1988 Fiesta Bowl for the national championship. They lost by 13 points, 34-21, and Notre Dame won its last national championship. Throughout the 90s, Don Nehlen's last years at West Virginia, they were decent. A lot of 8-4 seasons. Now, going into the years around the early 2000s, and obviously Rich Rodriguez, West Virginia came a drive away from going to the 2007 BCS national championship game. They were undefeated. They were playing Pitt. They lost 13-9, a game in which they were a 3-touchdown favorite, and lost that game, which ushered LSU into the national championship game. And they had a great 2005 season. They beat Georgia, who was a top 3 team in the country, in the Sugar Bowl. They've had, but generally they've been a fringe top 25 program for most of the last 35 to 40 years.
Yeah, that is true, but they're similar to Oklahoma State in that sense that they're not.
Sure, they are.
They're good.
Yeah, they're not going to compete for
championships.
No, and they're not going to win. Who knows when they'll ever win the conference?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Put West Virginia in the same bucket as, put them in the same bucket as Iowa. There you go.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. That's a pretty.
A lot of 8-4s. When is Iowa going to win? Now, Iowa took advantage of a really weak schedule, both non-conference, and they had one of those cycles in the Big Ten where they caught everybody bad in the other division. They didn't have to face Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State. This was in 2015. And then they took Michigan State to the wire, or they would have been in the playoff against Alabama. in 2015. They came within inches. LJ Scott barely pushed the pile to get into the end zone to win the game, to send Michigan State to a slaughtering 38-0 against Alabama, but that could have been Iowa. Now, everything had to hit perfectly for that team to almost win the Big Ten.
That is very, very true. But I do want to make a very quick point on this, Mark, is that I genuinely don't believe, maybe in my lifetime, I don't think that another team besides Texas or Oklahoma will win the national championship from the Big 12, unless the Big 12 expands.
This is in your lifetime? You're a young man.
I think so.
Okay, in the next 75 years, you're like 20 years old, aren't you? 25?
Yeah, 25.
25 years old.
Yeah.
So we'll give you, I don't want to sell you short on your lifespan. We'll give you 75 more years. I'm thinking I can make it to 100, so you can too. So 75 years. Who knows what's going to be going on in 75 years? My goodness, but nobody else from the Big 12. Well, the likely candidate, if there is going to be somebody else, would be, as you mentioned, Oklahoma State, also TCU, because of the Texas connection. They have the advantage over West Virginia because they're right there recruiting Texas talent. TCU would be my candidate. They would be my number one candidate to break through that.
Has TCU ever even won a national championship?
Yes.
TCU national championship. Oh, they have, actually.
I believe with Sammy Baugh.
They won one in 1935.
There you go.
In 1938. They even award, they did award national championships back then.
You bet they did.
I think,
the poll started in 36, and before that, people just grabbed whatever national championship they wanted to. They would just raise their hand and basically say, we won the national championship, and there would be like 7 teams that won the national championship.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you. I think that maybe, but it's not like the SEC or even the Big Ten. I believe there's many different teams in the Big Ten who have won multiple national championships.
Oh, sure.
And right, we don't have that type of depth. And unless there's a conference restructuring, or what is it called, a realignment, I don't think there's depth in the Big 12. And the thing that sucks for us, right, is that we don't get to the Red River rivalry is not important anymore because there's no conferences. So Texas and Oklahoma playing each other twice has no relevance.
All right, Deeper Rod, I appreciate it. We'll move along. We got a bunch of other people calling here, and so I wouldn't need to take these phone calls, and you're at 19 minutes. All right, Deeper Rod, thanks for the call, man.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, good question. Tabled by Deeper Rod there. Think about this one. Okay, make a dividing line year. What would that year be? It's got to be something that most of us can relate to, whether that's the year 2000 or the year 1990. And this is nothing scientific, but take the Power 5 conferences, each one of them, and then decide and look at a year that seems reasonable in regards to judging the current programs and the current structure of college football, and say, okay, since 1990, how many teams have won a national championship from that conference? Okay, put those teams to the side. So let's take the Big 12, for example, and let's go since 1990. Who has won a national championship from the Big 12 since 1990? Oklahoma and Texas. Okay, our exercise would be, who outside of those two teams, or however many teams that is for that particular conference, could win a national championship that have not since that particular year? Who would be that team? And for the Big 12, for me, that's number one. TCU would be the best candidate to win a national championship out of the Big 12. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? DeAndre, how you doing?
Hey, DeAndre. How are you?
I got time. Good. I got a kind of a cold, so I'm trying to talk real fast.
All right. Shake that thing off.
All right. First off, what you think about this blue blood argument? People are saying it's close to the blue blood.
No.
No. And I totally agree with you. But how can we call, and I know Michigan history, and it's a great history. How can you call Michigan a blue blood and not Clemson to Miami, because people say Miami and Clemson is too new to be a blue blood. But I was like, when Michigan with all their championships, I know they went to a lot of Rose Bowls. But none of us was really born outside of the one they won.
Well, let's all understand something here, DeAndre, is that we're all going to have a different definition. So there's no right, completely right answer. Obviously, there are idiotic answers, like somebody could say Yale's a blue blood because they're going back to the very beginning of college football, and that's all they consider. So, yeah, there are idiotic answers. But basically, there's a lot of leeway because think of it this way, and I think you make a great point. Okay. If you are, so for some people, they would say if you were not an original blue blood or a blue blood from early in the beginnings of college football, then you can never be a blue blood. So Clemson will never be a blue blood. I don't necessarily agree with that because it's all under context. Because if you want to really go back to the beginning of college football, and Ohio State wouldn't be a blue blood. They were playing football for a good 30 or 40 years before they really did anything of significance. Michigan beat them into the ground for about 15 years before they ever got a win. And they weren't doing much for 30 or 40 years. Now, of course, to us, that's all put in a condenser between like 1890 and 1940 or 50. That all kind of seems the same, but that's a long period of time. Now, if Clemson, let's take Clemson, and I'm not discarding Clemson's history because it's even before the last 5 to 6 years, it's still a very rich tradition in history. I'll liken it to, and again, let's cut off the last 5 or 6 years and the enormous success. I would liken Clemson's football tradition prior to that to an Arkansas. Arkansas has a tremendous football tradition and history, but they're not a blue blood. Iowa has a tremendous football history, but they're not a blue blood. So, yeah, I think you raise a really good argument, if I'm following you correctly, that at some point you can't keep saying, well, they've only been winning recently. Well, for Miami, you're talking about since 1983. We're pushing 40 years now. So at some point, and the same thing with Florida State. So at some point, we've got to say, well, 40 years is a pretty good chunk of college football history now, because the game's only about 125 years old, something in that range. What's ESPN celebrating this year? 150 years of college football, but basically football that we can actually watch and understand that's played under the same rules would be basically going back to like the 1920s or 30s. You have to knock out that first 50 years. So we're starting to get to a point, and to your point, what's Michigan done at an elite level over the last, well, certainly over the last 20 years? Nothing, almost nothing, and not much over the last, I know you're going to bring up national championships, and I think those are overrated, but I understand completely the argument. You're going to go back to 1948. They've got one national championship.
Right.
It's
like
Texas,
and I got a lot of respect for Texas, but Texas has only won one national championship since 1970.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, and I agree with you. National championship, especially in the poll era, is kind of overrated. I think if you look at 1984 when BYU won, I think Florida had a pretty good team, and they could be considered national champions that year, if I'm not mistaken. If you go to some of the other publications, so and so I get what you're saying, like how national championships are overrated. But and I heard somebody say this, like Nebraska. They don't run in the 90s, and they're, I think a lot of people think they're going to be pretty good this coming up year. I don't know why, but a lot of people think they're going to be pretty good this year. I still consider them a blue blood because they were playing on TV. You saw them. You saw Nebraska. You saw Oklahoma. Excuse me. You saw teams like that on TV all the time. Penn State, and stuff like that. Those are teams I consider growing up watching. Like, yeah, that's Nebraska. That's a Oklahoma team. I remember Oklahoma came to North Carolina one year. Everybody in the world was trying to go to that game. It's like, wow, like Oklahoma come here to play North Carolina. So this will be basketball. So the only time anybody cared about football in North Carolina in the 80s and 90s before Florida State joined the conference was when Clemson came to town. And
Well,
Clemson was the big dog on Raycon.
well, DeAndre,
And,
of course you knew. I'm sorry to cut you off. I thought you were done. DeAndre,
No,
of course you know where the term came from. Blue blood.
Duke and Carolina rivalry.
No.
I thought about basketball.
No. The term blue blood is a royal term. Basically means, you have wealth running through your veins. You inherited it. Like it can't go away. You have, your royal blood. You have an ascension to the kingdom, to the throne. And basically from birth, from the very beginning, it's just getting inherited generation after generation after generation. It's not going to change, kind of thing. You're a blue blood from the beginning.
Well, they can't call themselves a blue blood because Michigan, but they're the Big Ten, right?
Well, we have to, again, it's a relative term. It depends on your context. To me, there is no question that Alabama, Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Michigan are blue bloods. After we get past...
This is what I mean. Ohio State's been, to me, in my lifetime, is better than Michigan. But I bet you talk to most people, I bet you people think Michigan football history, current football history, better than Ohio State.
Well, we have Steve Dace on. I don't know if you listen to Steve Dace when he comes on here from Michigan Podcast, but he references that from time to time, that Michigan has a better football history than Ohio State. And I haven't argued it with him because it hasn't been part of the conversation, but I should probably set up an argument with him because I think I could out-argue him that Ohio State has eclipsed Michigan. And again, like if we were talking and this was 30 years ago, we'd have quite a fight. But at some point, you can't just keep relying on what happened 100 years ago. And you need to say, well, Ohio State's been so much better over the last 30 years that this has overtaken Michigan's history. And because it just has, they just have more of everything.
And see, that's what I'm saying. Like, even if you talk to some of my friends, we'll probably relate more. And you're not that much older than me, Mark, but people probably like, oh, look at this, Howard. What's the other guy named Woodson and all these other people. I think Michigan's had more flash over the years than Ohio State has. So that's why I think, more people go with them. And Michigan was always in the Orange Rose Bowl in the 90s, and Cooper couldn't beat Michigan when he was there and stuff like that. But like you just said, Ohio State has owned Michigan in recent years. And like bypassed them since they've had like 3 national championships since the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean Ohio State is like a beast. I mean they're a beast, but I bet you if you ask most people, they will say Michigan's a bigger blue blood than Ohio State is. I mean,
maybe.
State, yeah.
And
Ohio State is better.
And even when, to your point, even when Ohio State hasn't won national championship, which is of course a very difficult thing to do, even though it's not become a difficult thing for Dabo Swinney in particular and Nick Saban, but it's a very difficult thing to do. Ohio State is just repeatedly under Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer played in the best bowl games, even when they're not playing for a national championship. They're like in the top 5, and Jim Tressel won. If you go from the time Jim Tressel stepped on the field in 2001, Ohio State has not lost a game against Michigan since 2003 with Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer on the sideline. They've won 14 or 15 consecutive games against Michigan. The only time Michigan could beat them is because they had an interim coach and their program was in disarray for a year. And Ohio State has repeatedly won the Big Ten, played in New Year's Six bowl games every year. Like if you would list the Ohio State's record, okay, this really puts it into context. It's been since 2004. Do you know what Ohio State's worst record in the Big Ten since 2004 is? Since 2004. In conference play, their worst record is 7-1. They've not lost more than one game in the Big Ten in 15 years.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, that term blue blood is closer to Miami blue blood. I don't even want to bring up Miami because a lot of people say, "Oh, Miami's not blue blood."
They're working on it. Well, Miami's not working on it. Clemson's working on it. Miami had its. Cam Underwood uses a term called microwave dynasty, and I think that applies to Miami and to Florida State to a certain extent. Although Florida State continued its success longer than Miami's. That's a good debate right there. Florida State, Miami. Miami was able to win national titles more so than Florida State, but Florida State was a much more consistent winner for a longer period of time.
And then I always go back to social issues. The South, African Americans had to move
Absolutely
out of the South and go out to the West Coast to play up to Michigan and Notre Dame and Ohio State. I mean, they had to go to those places to play and go to school at because they couldn't play down south. So, and then when when Shettenberger or whoever else, what's my boy name, the Bear, when he was at what's called, say, hey, we got to start playing these African American guys. We got to win national championships and stuff. That's when you start seeing the change. But like I said, to me personally, I think the term blue blood, I know what you mean. Like I said, your blood. And Michigan, yes, it does got it. But like, what have you done for me lately? I mean, if we talk about another 10 years, people going to look at you like, who, Michigan? Like, like Barack, I heard him talking. They'll be like, Michigan, was a dynasty at one point. They had all these great players, and now you see all the kids go to Clemson. Or, go start going to Georgia. Like people, I would bet you people would say Georgia had more national championships than Clemson did. And I think Georgia only had, 2 in their lifetime?
Well, 1980 for sure. And I think they won one at some point prior to that. But yeah, 19. You nailed it right there. It is 1942. And again, to your point, at some point, we can't just keep saying, they weren't that good years and years ago. Well, we are living, you've been watching college football for 30 some years, and so have I. That's a big slice of college football history. And if Clemson keeps this up, it's not like Clemson was Purdue or Northwestern for 50 or 60 years and suddenly they're this good. They had a really good, as we talked about a few weeks ago and looked it up, they are 14th all time in wins. So it's not like they were getting run off the field. They were a consistent winning program. They were, I brought up other teams to compare them to in the past, in Iowa.
Like Kansas State
Kansas State just under Bill Snyder. Kansas State before that was, I did a post on Bill Snyder when he retired, and it's astonishing. Anybody go look at the Kansas State record year to year before Bill Snyder got there. It's unbelievable how bad they were forever. Like you've never seen a string of like 1-10, 2-9, 0-11, 2-9, over and over and over for 15 and 20 years at a time. How bad they were. But anyway, Iowa's been good for years and years and years, but not great. And certainly a few programs in the Texas A&M would be in Iowa, would be a Clemson before Dabo Swinney. Oregon, I'd really have to I'd really have to look at the history prior to the 70s and 80s with Oregon. But go ahead.
Yeah, before I let you go, look up my last question. I wish Clemson fans would give Tommy Brown a little bit more credit. I mean, I know the 90s were terrible after, I think, 91, 92, whenever Cal and Syracuse was out in the bowl games and didn't change the offense. But Bauer did a lot to bring up the program.
Yeah.
He did a lot to make sure our program got right. And Bauer, Bauer started beating Florida State. We beat them at 89 down at Florida State. I think that year Florida State beat Miami. And that was the only game Miami lost. And Clemson beat Florida State by like 10 points down there with Kirkland and them guys. But Bauer did a lot for that program. And we started beating Florida State. We started becoming relevant. I don't think he ever won an ACC championship, but we started becoming relevant. He'll lose to Georgia Tech or Syracuse or somebody crazy. Not Georgia Syracuse, but Georgia Tech or NC State will beat everybody else. And I think that's where that term Clemson came from. We expect them to do something good, and they just messed up. And that was on the Bowden, but Bowden did a lot of good stuff. I mean, I know they said Sweeney recruited a lot of those players, but he would have got Sweeney though. So that just tells you that he knew that Sweeney probably had a lot of good qualities about him. And I think we were telling people Gabe Adams was under Tommy Bowden, and Bowden was getting plays. I mean, I know everybody credit Jim Kelly with bringing in this power spread run option, but the first team I ever remember doing it was Tulane with Bowden and Rodriguez, and they'll cover the Clemson and doing it. That's the first team I've ever seen run the power spread option. Like Oregon did with Jim Kelly, and I know they were there before Jim Kelly was at Oregon.
Tulane could claim a national championship in 1998 with Sean King at quarterback when they went undefeated. All right, DeAndre, we appreciate you jumping on the line. What I'm going to do is address all these comments in the live chat because some people need to be corrected on a few things. So I'm going to do that right now.
All right.
All right, DeAndre, thanks for the call. All right. Give me a couple minutes to address the live chat. I'm not going to take any calls for a minute or two. Let me look at the live chat. I see a few people jumping on a few comments that I made and maybe taking them out of context or not understanding my point. All right. From the top. Well, I can't go to the top, unfortunately. So anybody that commented early that wants me to respond, my apologies. I can only go to the top of the chat. Yeah, I can't go to the very top of the chat. The first one I've got here is from MTD Sports 4. They're talking about expansion. I'm not going to dive into that. Blue Bloods doesn't matter. It doesn't win you rings. D. Rev Lee. What a interesting discussion about rings and national championships and in college football. Obviously, they're tainted. There's a lot of discussion and debate into national championships and how relevant they are. It's not like the Super Bowl where it's objective. And also, take a team that's won a national championship that otherwise hasn't been very good, and that's difficult to do. I'll give you one example. I've got to go back to 1990, but it's the first one that comes to mind, when Georgia Tech split a national championship with Colorado. Georgia Tech, who would want Georgia Tech's football history against? Name a team that's not won a national championship. What is the best program you can think of that hasn't won a national championship for quite some time? I can think of a number of programs that are better than Georgia Tech's and has been better than Georgia Tech since 1990. Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, and have not won a national championship. Those are the first three that come to mind. So would you rather be Georgia Tech that won a half of a national championship, or be Iowa, Michigan State, Wisconsin and say, well, we win a lot more than Georgia Tech on a regular basis? There's no right answer. There is no right answer. But for me, I have a hard time buying into the national championship argument. It's one part of the argument, but just because one school has 7 national championships and another one has 4, to me, doesn't tell the entire story, because you're only accounting for 7 years or 4 years out of 100+ years of football. That's all you're accounting for. So basically what you're saying, and this is not right or wrong, but you're basically saying that the team that wins the national championship, so in 2018, Clemson won the national championship, that's all that counts. Whether you're Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, you finished 13-1, 14-1, you won a Rose Bowl, you did this, you did that, you won the SEC, whatever, does not matter. Wipe it away. You did exactly the same. Your performance should be measured exactly as Kansas, Illinois, Rutgers, Oregon State. They did just as well as Ohio State, Oklahoma, Alabama, etc. That's what you're saying by saying just measuring national championships and saying we've got 7, you've got 4, we're better. And if that's the way you want to measure it, you may win a certain argument, but then I can also take that and other people and turn it against you. So just keep that in mind. And I'm taking it that you're not going to let me go through the live chat. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
George, what's going on?
I feel like this is like deja vu.
Deja
Has this
vu.
happened before?
That you've called?
Yeah.
I
always
think it's happened
go,
once
hey,
or
Mark,
twice.
it's George. And you go, hey, George.
Well, that's kind of my unique line there to open up the conversation. Hey, George. What's on your mind, George?
I've been in the chat for
Oh,
like
I
an
see.
hour.
I see you're there. Yep.
Hey, listen, can I put you on the spot? Can I back you into a corner? I want your prediction on the Florida-Miami game. Because I give Miami a 0% chance
Well,
of winning.
don't sway me, George. Just ask the question and let me. I don't want to be able to. I don't want to be sway. I don't want to be. You certainly will sway me with your knowledge and insight on the game. So I don't want to be swayed by your knowledge and insight. So based
on that Miami show the other night, that is the most participation I've ever seen. I love these people, and they love me. You know, they know I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying it's our year. It ain't their year. They got a new head coach. That man's never been a head coach in his life, and he's following up Mark Richt, and he's done a good job. It's admirable, but I think it's asking a bit much. You know,
how
Florida.
Okay,
Dan Mullen's like Dr. Doom or something. There's no way. It ain't gonna happen.
Do I get to respond, George?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Okay. So I get your point. It's a valid point about having an experienced, successful coach on one sideline, and then on the other sideline, a guy that's a complete wild card as a head coach at this point. But let's also understand. Let's understand that I think most of us would agree that Ohio State has a chance of being really good this year, and they will have a first-year head coach. Oklahoma went to the playoff 2 years ago with a first-year head coach on the sideline.
You cannot compare Oklahoma. You can't compare Oklahoma or Ohio State to Miami. Those are just not even congruent.
Yeah, they're much better programs. Yes, they're much better programs.
I swear to God, I think Ohio State will win their conference this year. Ohio State's a machine, and Alabama's a machine. Clemson's a machine. Miami's not a machine. Florida is getting close to being a machine.
So
Miami's not a machine. They're just hoping. And you know what? Then everybody on their schedule sucks until they play Clemson if they can beat Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh this year. What a sorry life. I feel sorry for them. I mean, look at that schedule. You want to run the schedule down? What a joke. And you think you're going to beat Florida? You're not going to beat Florida. You can't beat Pittsburgh.
All right, here we go. So my thoughts at this point. You want a prediction right now on the game?
Yeah, honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest. If I'm going to give a prediction, I'm not going to give you my dishonest opinion. But let's all understand that my prediction is going to come just prior to the game. My real prediction. But right now, if those two teams are on the field and I'm making a prediction,
Wait a minute, Mark.
What?
Wait a minute before you answer.
Yep.
90% of your viewing audience is Miami. Say Miami 31, Florida 30. That's my suggestion.
Well, you're always looking out for my career, and I appreciate that.
In double overtime.
Your final score
on a sidearm pass from whatever that Terry dude's name is.
Your final score, because I'm taking Miami in the 8.5 points, is Florida 24, Miami 17. That's your final score as of right now.
If that happens, I'll just die. I'll just be like, Mark, how the hell did you do that? How did you know that? I'll take that, though. I'll take a 1-point win in triple overtime. I don't care.
George, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to spit out about 48 different scores like you do. And so then I'm going to be able to go back and say, you know what? Hey, see, look at this video from April 14th. I said Florida was going to win 27-24. There it is.
Mark, I'm not a scientist, but you renew all your cells like every so many days. It's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. You're just being honest. You've adjusted.
Yes, and I'll adjust at halftime, and I'll adjust after the game.
I love Miami fans, Mark. I never engaged on the internet ever in the history of my life. I can't even believe I'm doing this. I'm 58 freaking years old, and this is the most fun I've ever had. Uncle Lou and you and Pete and Bobby Durkins and Catfish, and it's like a little community online, you know?
You bet. We're all here. All do it a little bit different.
Fans. I don't know any of them, but I know 300 names in the chat section, and I can't read it. It goes too fast. I do the best I can, you know. Sometimes I got to walk away and take a phone call or get a cup of coffee, you know, but I try.
It was moving the other night during the Miami show when we had about, I think we got up to about 210 or so.
God bless those Miami fans. They were so much fun. No one got rude with me or out of line. They were glad I was there, you know. Like one guy from the other side. Yeah, it was cool. Alonzo, man, you need to call him on his private number and tell him quit doing it. You don't need to do it. Don't say punk. Don't say bitch. You know, he can't. He's too big now. He better just, you know, go more mainstream.
Like me.
Like you. Can you imagine Mark Rogers saying punk and bitch to somebody? No, we don't roll that way. We don't roll like that.
I let you say those things, George.
I hope. You know what? I'm so mad.
George,
stop acting.
So the last I checked here, I was at 9,800 and whatever the number was. I'm about 125 away from 10,000. So what do you think we need to do on here for a big celebration? What do we need to do for a big celebration? I think I'm going to get a cake, and I'll get balloons and dress up the set, and we'll have a big celebration. Can I believe it? Yes, we're going to blow right through 10,000.
Listen to me.
Yes.
I lied to you. 10,000 is not the mark. It's 100,000. Do that when you get to 100,000. Just keep your nose to the grindstone. Don't spend a dime. If you want to spend a penny, buy a camera. No party. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm buying a camera. I'm going to buy 2 cameras, actually. But because I want to be able to take one on the road, and then the other is that I want to be able to have a close-up shot that you currently see, but then I also want a broad shot from, you know, the back of the room where you can see the entire set.
I'm just saying I was lying to you as someone I know that's uninitiated. I was tempting you with a 10,000 mark. The number's really 18,000, so keep your nose to the grindstone and don't celebrate. Buy it, you know, save all that money and buy a studio or an RV, whatever you got to do. But it is not time to celebrate yet.
I can't celebrate by buying. I can't buy a package of $2.99 balloons and a $10 cake.
You have 120 days to get to wherever you're going to get to on opening day. I would suggest the Florida Miami game, but
I'm going to be there. I'm going to the game.
You should. I want you to hold your cell phone up and live broadcast the game and talk to us and say, you know what? It looks like George might have been right. It's 62-12. You know.
That is the plan right now, is to go to the game. I'm going to be at the game. Since they moved it.
Before you die, take your family to a game at the Swamp, you know, and just LSU game or Texas A&M or Alabama. Isn't that great to come to our stadium?
You are right about the 2 schedules, George. The Miami schedule versus the Florida schedule. There is no comparison.
Jesus Christ, our schedule is like, I just want to lick the schedule. Like,
okay.
Yes,
well, the Almighty doesn't have anything to do with the Almighty does not have anything to do with your schedule.
All right. I'm a Southeastern Conference fan. I get overly excited. It's more than football. It means more.
So I hear. That sounds like a good slogan.
You know what, Mark?
It's an idiotic slogan, but yeah, go ahead.
You You know what the biggest joke in college football is? I've seen 1,000 texts about this, right? Kentucky beat Florida, right?
Sure.
I play Kentucky. I play them every year, right? They are a really, really, really good football team. You follow me? You don't just play Kentucky and get a free game. And you don't even get to play Vanderbilt and get a free game. Even our worst players are better than the starters in the Pac-12, you know?
Well, let's not stretch it to that degree.
I know there's always one guy that goes to the Pac-12 like Thibodeau, but generally speaking, you know, we got 5 stars. They have 2 stars.
Well, again, that's a big stretch. So you're speaking in just complete, utter, huge categories that, yeah, you are generalizing way over the brink when you say the Pac-12 is full of 2 stars and the SEC is full of 5 stars. First of all, there's only about 35 or 45 stars in each class. So about half of those go to the SEC. So there's only like 17 guys from any one particular class that are 5 stars that go to the SEC. So I will never let these comments go that don't make any sense, George. You know me. I'm not going to let that comment go. Yes, there's more talent in the SEC than the Pac-12, but it's not a bunch of 5 stars playing a bunch of 2 stars.
Can I 3-way Lance and Jasper? Can I call him and see if he answers?
I don't know who you're talking about, but
come on, you've heard his
I
name
have
before.
no idea who you're talking about. You have to realize, George, I do this. So I work at a particular facility that you've heard of a lot of hours every week. And then I get on here, and when I'm not actually producing videos and live streaming, I'm working on my channel to make it explode. And the rest of the time, I'm not watching a bunch of YouTube guys. I know like 3 YouTube guys.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing this. I was practicing to be your production manager, and I make kids that'll be your sound man or whatever you wanted. But let's hook up, man. Let's do
Well,
this.
considering I have 18 years experience as a production manager at a network, I could probably do that for myself.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. So what are we doing?
Yeah. So Lance from Jasper. Somebody had commented, you would love this. I'm trying to think who this was. I jumped in on Alonzo's live stream about 4 or 5 hours ago, and there was a guy called SEC Dog. I don't know that I've ever seen him before, but he noticed that I was in the live chat, and he immediately said, "Hey, Mark Rogers TV, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, is right there." And he was wanting me to start a Florida show like the Miami show each and every week. And I said, hey, if you can give me guests, I'll do a Purdue show every week, Minnesota show. Certainly, I will do a Florida show every week if you can get me the guests that are going to show up each and every week to talk Florida football.
Mark, I'm a Florida Gator, a Bull Gator. I don't think it's going to work. You know why?
Why?
There's a disparity between the Florida fan base and the Miami fan base.
In terms of what? Numbers?
No, listen to this.
Okay.
This is true, dude. I'm like an old man. I'm 58, and I just learned this internet shit like 10 years ago, and I know what's going on. I see it. I mean, I'm doing this live. They have more fans online. You follow me? And they're so fun, and they're not joking. They're so serious. I've never seen nothing like it. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. If you're a football player in the social media, go to Miami. People will talk about you all day. You can interface with them. Florida doesn't have that. They watch Gator Breakdown and Uncle Luke, basically.
See, I was just basically going to say that would be one of the reasons why I would not start a Florida show, because even though I cover all of.
I tried to.
Whoa! Quit talking while I'm talking, George. Okay. The reason I would not start a Florida show, even though I cover the entirety of college football and will start a show on any team that I believe will get traction, is because I have so much respect for Gators Breakdown. And not that I wouldn't start my own Florida show, but they kill it. They do it great. David Waters and company. And of course, David and I started together doing SEC Breakdown, and he does an exceptional job. That's why I wouldn't do, that would not be the next team I would jump on, would be Florida, because I know that they do an amazing job, and I can't compete with them.
Hey, David has that guy Will on his show. That's a badass motherfucker. That guy can talk some shit about football. He's the statistical analyst of all times. That guy Will. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Will Sykes, I believe is his name.
Yeah. And
I think I had him on
once. I tried to tempt you to go to Florida and be that guy. But David did it right. I love the guy, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. They do go to Gator Breakdown, and it's not a niche market that you can take over necessarily. You don't need to. You interface with them, and you bring them on as a guest, or you're a guest on their show. I think you guys are creating a conglomerate, man. You should do like the East India Company of college football. Take it over.
We're doing our best, one day at a time, George.
All right, tell Miami, what percent chance do you think they have of beating Florida? Like 10%, 20%? What percent chance do you think Miami has of winning?
42.
42.
42%.
All right, that's fair. That scares me. That scares the shit out of me. I was hoping you say like 12.
George, the next time you're on the line, I'm going to give you a cussing quota. I think it's going to be 3, and then I'm just going to hit the...
Hey, I can do this. I can just quit drinking beer and move to green tea, and it'll all be okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Miami. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings.
George, thanks for the conversation. It's always a good one, and thanks for the comments. George, again, I won't even say unofficially. This is officially. George has commented to my channel. I guarantee this more than anybody, and supported the channel through his comments more than anybody in the history of Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. George, thank you.
That wouldn't mean anything if I was fake, but I'm real. I actually did that. I'm a real guy, and I did it because you and Uncle Lou and Pete and Alonzo and all you guys, I mean,
yep.
I live for college football.
All right, George.
Thank you for your content.
Thank you. Got a call coming in.
What you do.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Too late. Somebody hung up. So again, production software, I will be able to put calls on hold. We'll get there. All right, let me get back to the live chat. I answered like 2 out of 742 comments. That's all I got to. All right, there was some good stuff in here, especially from, I've got to point out, Ryan Reedley, who contributed to the channel through the super chat. Ryan, I thank you so much, and I appreciate you saying good show, Mark. Yes, this is labor of love, but we are building a business, and we are doing it in this way, shape, or form. Patreon is another outlet in which we are building a revenue stream there, and we'll have our weekly reaction from me to your viewer comments available on Patreon. So if you want to know a little bit more of what I'm talking about, then, as I answer this phone call, then you will check out our last video. So just check out the last video. And even if you don't have the patience to watch all the viewer comment reaction from me for 25 minutes and somebody just hung up, then just watch the first few minutes in which I explain that that is one portion of our content that we are moving over to Patreon, which is going to be my viewer comment reaction, which I'm hoping will be entertaining. All right, whoever called, if you would like to call back, I will take your call. So, Ryan, thank you so much. 860-325-3687. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark, I'll let you go on this, DeAndre. What you should do, like you did the other day with Kim, put me, Pete, and Bobby on at the same time. Boy, that would be hilarious.
Okay, we could do that. You pick a time, you get together with those two, and you figure out a good time, and we can do that.
You just tell me, I'll be there. But
No. You guys organize. I will tell you when I'm available. Let's do this. I will tell the 3 of you when I'm available, and then the 3 of you can figure out when all of you will be available at the same time that I am. Let's do that.
And Princess one now, boy, that'd be hilarious.
You get the Prince on there too. Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I'll do it. Big
Princess.
Clemson show. Sure. All right, DeAndre, we'll see you. How about that? A big Clemson show. We get on DeAndre, we got Prince 6'1". We've got Bobby Durkins and also Pigskin Pete, which Pigskin Pete joined us this week to talk college football, talk Clemson football. That must have been released on Tuesday or Wednesday. So check out the video. It was a good discussion with Pigskin Pete. All right. Let me get to these live chat comments again. Let's see if we can make it through. Brad Roy. Florida isn't close to being a machine. Get rid of this idiot. We'll get to that comment in just a second. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, this is Eli, and I was here because I want to talk about realignment and like some things that I think would, I guess, make it better.
I apologize, sir. I missed your handle.
What you missed? What?
Your handle.
My handle?
Your name.
Eli.
Eli, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I appreciate you calling for the first time. I believe you contribute a lot in the live chat and in the comments.
Yeah. So, I guess if we're going to talk about realignment, the first thing, I would like to mention is the Big Ten. Like, it's really one simple move. Like, hey, I don't know if they can do this, but I'd love to see them just get rid of Rutgers.
So Eli, this is what we're going to do is you spit out everything you'd like to talk about concerning realignment and all your suggestions. And then I'm going to let you know exactly how I've planned this out. So go right ahead.
Okay. So I guess first what I would do let's start with the Big Ten. I guess it would just be two moves, get rid of Rutgers and add Cincinnati.
Okay.
And then for the, ACC, I actually wouldn't get rid of anyone, but I would bring UCF from the American Athletic Conference, and I guess add West Virginia from the Big 12, just because West Virginia and the Big 12 really doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so you currently would have 14 teams in the Big 10 because you dropped one and added one with the Cincinnati Rutgers switch, and now you have 16 teams in the ACC.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now in the Big 12, so you drop West Virginia, so that would be 9, and then I would replace them by adding Boise State. I guess BYU, maybe, I don't know, either them or someone else. So let's say BYU.
Navy. You're going to put Navy in the Big 12.
No, not Navy. I said Navy BYU.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then I guess this might sound a bit off the wall, but I would bring up North Dakota State from the FCS.
Okay.
And I mean, and they have beaten a bunch of Power 5 teams before. Like they even beat a ranked Iowa team once, and they've beaten Minnesota. They've beaten Kansas and Kansas State in the Big 12. So I think they could actually play. Their on-field product.
Minnesota.
They're not just. Yeah, they beat Minnesota too. So I mean, they definitely don't belong in the FCS. They're more of a Power 5 team, in my opinion, than Group of 5. I think the SEC is the only conference they would struggle in.
You think North Dakota State would not struggle in the Big 10?
I think they've beaten some Big 10 teams.
Well, I understand. I understand a couple times they beat some Big 10 teams, but Temple's beaten some Big 10 teams too. I don't think that necessarily, who was it that took Auburn to overtime? Georgia Southern beat Florida a couple years ago. So, yeah, I am taking your point and exaggerating it. So I certainly think that there is some validity to what you're saying. I'm not trashing your point, but I think you're taking it to a larger degree than it should. I just don't think that they would play well in the Big 10. But again, somebody's got to lose the game. So Illinois is losing them and Rutgers right now. So I think North Dakota State would just lose those games too. I don't think that they would be. To your point, I don't think that they would get into the Big 10 and be embarrassed, like losing 50-5 or 50-10 every week. They would compete. And they would lose most of their games and go 2-7 in the conference. And that's what I think they would do.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess I know you're exaggerating a bit, but I'm not just going off of like one-off game because this can happen anytime.
You're right.
I'm just saying the fact that they won their last 6. I think they won the last 6 Power 5 games. That's a little different than say one random FCS team being a
Very true.
team like Kansas or Rutgers. You know,
Let's give it a look here. Keep going.
like I think they could compete in the Big Ten West. I don't know. Like maybe they could actually, because they beat an Iowa team that was ranked 13th in the country that year. I think, and they beat Minnesota more than a couple times. So I think they could probably beat teams like Purdue, Minnesota. And the Big Ten West is so much parity. I mean, okay, maybe they would struggle a little bit early on since they'd have to make it adjustment going from 63 scholars to 85. But after a couple of years, I think they'd be fine, and I think they could compete in the Big 12 or the Big 10.
Okay. Are you going to keep going?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. So, I mean, who else would you add from the Big 12 if you're dropping one team to make it 9? And I mean, I guess you could just add one team like maybe Boise State and make it back to 10. But I don't know. I think they should make it to 12. And I think that's one thing that I would like to see, to have every conference have at least 12. And I know the ACC would have 16. And I'm not giving the Pac-12 or the SEC any teams. I'll just leave them where they're at in this realignment thing.
So how many teams do you have in these conferences? We already determined 14 in the Big Ten and 16 in the ACC. So that doesn't bother you?
Then you have 14 in the SEC, you have 12 in the Big 12, and then 12 in the Pac-12.
Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think we can do better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, like, you don't really want an odd number of teams in any conference. I mean, you could say maybe put, like, West Virginia in the ACC and UCF in the SEC, but then if it was 15, that would create, like, scheduling nightmares.
Okay, this is how you do it. Are you ready for mine?
Sure.
All right. I produced a video maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I should hunt it down and re-release it. I produced a 72-team Power 5, and I put everybody in a conference, and I made it 6 conferences with 12 teams in every conference. Therefore, we would have perfect alignment of number of teams in every conference and number of games in every conference. So I created a Big East conference. I reestablished the Big East. And so what I did was I took Rutgers and Maryland out of the Big Ten, as well as Penn State out of the Big Ten. Now, some people might have their feathers ruffled a little bit by realignment, but I had to make some difficult decisions, and I believe that Penn State certainly belongs in the Big Ten, but there just had to be some difficult decisions. But other than that, that was really the only stretch I had to make. So I had to take some teams out of the group of 5 that I thought were worthy long range of playing Power 5 football. So I reestablished a Big East that had 12 teams, and let me think off the top of my head. It was Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers. I took 4 teams out of the ACC. I took a Boston.
Well, Pitt and Syracuse used to be in the Big East, so those would make sense.
I took Boston College, Pitt, Syracuse, and Louisville out of the ACC because of geographics. In terms of geography, they belong in the Big East. The Big East was, this all made geographical sense. And so that took the ACC down to 10 teams, but I added Central Florida and South Florida to the ACC. And so you again reestablished a Southern ACC conference. It was all from Virginia down to Florida. And then the SEC was simply take out Texas A&M and Missouri, take them back out, throw them in the Big 12. West Virginia goes to the Big East. So once you add, and again, you got to remember that I'm doing this off the top of my head, but once you take Texas A&M and Missouri and add them to the Big 12, take out West Virginia, and you also add Houston. So you got 12 teams in the Big 12. In the Big 10, we take out Rutgers, Penn State, and Maryland, but we add Notre Dame. They belong in the Big 10. And then out in the Pac-12, I think my answer was, oh goodness, what did I do? Well, they're at 12.
Leave everyone the
there was some kind of juxtaposition in which I pulled Colorado and I added Boise State. I did something. I would have to go back and look at it. But I wound up with 12 teams in 6 conferences. And I thought it made geographic sense in football sense.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I would personally love to see the old Big East back. Like, I mean, there's some good rivalries, like the backyard brawl between Pitt and West Virginia. That would be great to bring that one back. And I don't know, it's kind of sad to see how the Big East is. I mean, and they used to be a great basketball conference too. So I kind of miss the Big East as it used to be.
Sure.
But I guess I was just thinking more like what happened, because I guess I just figure in the real world, even though as much as I'd love to see that it's probably never going to happen again. So, I mean, in a perfect world, I guess I wouldn't mind seeing Maryland in the Big East. I kind of miss when they were in the ACC back when they had their old, more for basketball, because their football program is pretty bad, but their basketball program, like I miss, when they used to play Duke and North Carolina in basketball. Those were some good games.
Sure. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, and I agree totally on Texas A&M and Missouri, even though they'll probably never go back to the Big 12. I mean, the Missouri-Kansas rivalry was a great one, and obviously the Texas A&M was one of the best rivalries that was lost. So those are like really sad rivalries to lose. So I don't know.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, the realignment is obviously a bit of a fantasy there. There's a whole lot of money that needs to be exchanged, and politics and people's territorial rights have to be challenged, and a lot needs to happen to make things work, and a lot of cooperation.
Plus, I don't know if the Big Ten could ever actually kick out Rutgers. And I have a lot of friends that are Penn State fans. A lot of them want Rutgers and Maryland gone. And I mean, Maryland at least brings good basketball to the conference. Rutgers, that's nothing. Yeah.
But football.
But anyways, thank you for taking my call.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
All right,
bye. All right, realignment, always interesting. There's no perfect way to do it, but I certainly felt as though I came up with a pretty good system. I didn't like removing Penn State from the Big Ten, but that was the only move that I didn't like. I got to dig up that video. It's buried. It's like 4,000 videos buried. So to try to find it, and I can't remember when I did it. Obviously, it was during an off season, but I can't remember when I produced that video. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's MCD Sports.
Oh, yeah, MCD4. How's it going?
Hey, I wasn't going to let that guy get away talking crap about Maryland.
What kind of crap was he talking about?
Basically, the Maryland football program is bad.
Well, okay.
It's not.
It's going to be bad. I don't disagree with you.
This year.
I don't.
This year.
Whoa. I don't necessarily disagree with you that it could be better and could improve, but you don't have a leg to stand on. When is the last time Maryland's been good at football? I will tell you, Ralph Friedgen, not at the end of his term, but prior to that, 2001, 2, 3, in that range. That's the last time Maryland's been any good at football. You know, they went to the Quick Lane Bowl a few years ago and lost to Boston College and finished 6-7. They lost to who did they lose to in a bowl game? Like a group of 5 team, South Florida or somebody like that a few years ago. Who was it? Marshall. They lost to Marshall in a bowl game. Yes, Maryland is not good at football, and until you prove it otherwise on the field, we have to stand on that. Maryland is not good at football. Prove it. It has to be proven otherwise.
Well, I did want to call up to say a few things, but one quick thing I want to add. I do think Maryland should have stayed in the ACC. I liked us in the ACC better than the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
for football and basketball?
For both. Maryland would gone at least 8-4 in that ACC. At least 8-4. And you know it, Mark.
In the ACC.
In the ACC, put Maryland in there. They'll be 8-4.
Last year?
Last season.
Well, I got to say, DeAndre would be mad at you for saying that, but all we have to do is look at postseason play and see Minnesota just wreck Georgia Tech 34-10. Who else? Wisconsin and Miami, of course, they obliterated Miami 35-3. And there was another Big Ten matchup against the ACC in postseason play. Yes, Maryland would have jumped right in there, and it would have been a dogfight with them and Virginia Tech and Pitt and Georgia Tech. They're all about the same. Yeah, they could have gone. What did you go out of conference? Let's say you would have had one other easy non-conference game that you would have won. Let's say you lost to Temple, you beat Texas. You went. Let's say you would have gone 3-1 out of conference. Yeah, you could have gone 4-4. In the conference, certainly, and gone 7-5, or gone 5-3 in the conference like Georgia Tech did, and gone 8-4. Yeah, probably. You wouldn't have had to face Penn State, Ohio State. Who else you faced from the West? I don't remember, but of course, Michigan State.
Iowa last year in the West, they shut us out 23-0. We own Minnesota, by the way.
Oh, yes, 42-13. Yes.
Yeah, we own Minnesota. I'm tired of people saying Minnesota is good because they're not. They're overrated. And we had Illinois, which is basically a bye, even though we gave up 33 to them, which I had a little bit of a problem with. But I think this year in the Big Ten, I think Maryland's going to turn some heads. I really do. I mean, I think Penn State. Listen, I do think Penn State's great, but Friday night, and we are coming off a bye, that could be a win for us. I do think Ohio State's overrated. I think Michigan, we get them at home, they're overrated. I think we're better than Michigan State. I really do. And Nebraska, Purdue, and Minnesota out in the West. And I think we're better than Minnesota. And I think we're right there with Purdue. And Nebraska, we do get them at home. So, I mean, I think we could really turn some heads. What do you think?
I am adding up your records in the Big Ten. Hang on. I broke my that broke my concentrate. You're like, did you shoot 9 and shoot? What's it's 4 times 9, and it's 36 games. You're 9-20. Hang on, 9-27. The first year you went 4-4, so you're 13-31. Is that right? 13-32 in the Big Ten.
I mean,
that's not very good.
I know it's not good. I'm just telling you, Mark. I'm telling you this.
So don't tell me you're
up.
Okay. I need to see it. You can't play.
Absolutely.
You can't play Texas every week.
We should. That's the automatic win for us.
But yes, I am impressed with it. It's very odd watching your team play because let's see, last season I saw the entire Texas game. I saw the entire Ohio State game. I saw some of the Michigan game. I saw some of the Penn State game. I saw some of the Iowa game, and I saw a lot of the Minnesota game. And as you mentioned, I think that was the Big Ten opener. You killed them. Now, understand that Minnesota got much better later in the year, but and I saw some of the Iowa game, and yeah, you looked like world beaters at times. It's a very fast football team, and you had the 2 extremely good recruiting classes, and that certainly shows up at times. But sometimes you looked pretty awful. But yeah, I would think that going 4-5 this year in the Big Ten, and if you could upset Syracuse, which certainly could happen.
I think that's not an upset. That's not an upset. That's a win.
Okay, well, I'm certainly less confident than you are, but it wouldn't surprise me that you go 7-5 this year.
New quarterback at Syracuse. No disrespect to Syracuse. It's just that they have a new quarterback. I do think we could get payback with Temple, and we get Howard. So I think we go 3-0 in the non-con. Maybe go 5-4 in the conference, and we could be 8-4.
Okay.
I think that's possible.
Okay. You understand, MCD4, that a few nights ago you said that Maryland was going to win the Big Ten championship. I don't think 8-4 is going to cut it, and 5-4 in the conference.
I'm I'm just talking like what like worst case scenario.
Oh, okay. 5-4 is your worst case scenario. I think your worst case scenario is, well, 0-9, but your truly worst case scenario reasonably is 2-7 in the Big Ten, and I think 5-4 is your best case scenario, not your worst case scenario. For a program that's 13-32 in the Big Ten, I think 5-4 is your best case scenario.
I also remember this, Mark. Mike Locksley. Mike Locksley.
Sure.
Guess who he was the offensive coordinator last year of?
A school in the SEC that's won a few championships recently. Yes, I know where Mike Locksley came from.
He's gonna ball out with this fast-paced offense. This offense is gonna be the best in the Big Ten, Mark.
Okay.
I know the defense ain't gonna be that pretty, but the offense is gonna carry us to bare minimum, I think, 8 wins. I'm telling you. This is the most confident I felt about a Maryland team in a while.
Some people in the live chat are pointing out something that I pointed out when I did a Mike Locksley profile when he got the job, is that stint he had at New Mexico State was awfully ugly.
It was, but it's a new job, it's a new beginning. I feel confident in him. I really do.
All right. I would love to have your optimism in the face of going 13-32 in the Big Ten. I think you need to start getting up off your knees and walking before you can run. Stop crawling and take some positive steps. 4-5 in the Big Ten would be a tremendous improvement. You can go 4-5 and either go 7-5, 7-5 overall. Something in that range. Get to a bowl game. Get back to postseason play, and beat one of those 4 biggies in the Big East or in the Big Ten East. Knock off a Michigan State or a Penn State this year.
I think we knock off all 4 personally. I really do. I mean, that overrated team at Ohio State. I mean,
oh yes.
That should have been a win.
Oh, of course it should have been. It should have been a win. Yes.
Tatum dropped the ball in the end zone, 2-point conversion.
Yes, but you understand you played your best game at home. You played lights out, and Ohio State, I don't want to say they didn't show up, but they were playing Michigan the next week. You understand that they didn't play a good game. You understand that the difference between Ohio State 2018 and Maryland is like miles. That if they play that game 10 times, that Ohio State wins that 10 times, and they win by 3 touchdowns most of the time. Yes, you played a great game. You almost beat them, but you didn't. And the rest of the time you played like garbage unless you were playing Texas. And you played a couple decent games. You played a really good game against Texas, really good game against Ohio State. You played Minnesota well before they were playing well. I don't know how that game would have went late in the season, but you went 5-7. And Ohio State was one of the 5 best teams in the country. There's no comparison. Yes, on a given Saturday, you played them extremely well. We can point out all sorts of examples of that across the country. We can do that to a number of teams. Army took Oklahoma to overtime. Oklahoma State took Oklahoma to the last play of the game. They should have beaten them. If they would have gone for a 2-point conversion and missed an extra point, they would have beaten them. We can have all sorts of examples of one game. And to Maryland's credit, again, on that field on that day, they were just as good as Ohio State. But over the course of 14 games for Ohio State and 12 for Maryland, we could easily see that there was no comparison between these two teams. And so for you to say that they're going to sweep when they are 0-24 against Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State, for you to say they're now going to go 4-0, you got to realize that that's ridiculous. Now, come back in December if Maryland's able to do that and laugh in my face, and I would think it's hilarious, and that would be great. But I can't see it happening. Win one of those games. Just win one of those games. Start with that. 1.
I think we're going to win all four, Mark. I really do. I mean,
it must be great to look at the world through those kind of glasses. You're going to beat Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State. You're going to sweep all four of them. You've never beaten any of them, but now you're going to beat all four of them.
Until we lose to them, I believe we're going to sweep them. You got to believe in your team, Mark.
Well, that's great. If you were a Rutgers fan, what would your prediction be for this? You might as well say Maryland's going to win the national championship then. If you're going to believe in your team, if they're going to beat those four, why aren't they going to go? If you're saying they're going to go 5-4 in the Big Ten, worst case scenario, and beat all four of those, you might as well just predict a Big Ten championship.
Big Ten championship is going to be Maryland versus Iowa.
I'm going to be knocked off the air very, very quickly if I don't get this computer charged up because I did not plug it in. So
I'm telling you, Mark, just believe in your team. That's
sitting at
all.
9%. All right, MCD Sports 4. Appreciate the call, man. Go have another one. All right, we'll talk to you later. Maryland is 0-24 against Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State, but they're going to go 4-0 this year with Mike Loxley as the head coach. I would love to see it. I would be amused to see Maryland in the Big Ten championship game. Man, I got a business to build here. I need to probably get off the line and start working. Got marketing and business and accounting to do and all sorts of things. All right, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Bash. Long time no see.
Absolutely, Bash. How are you?
Pretty good. Yourself?
I'm on the top of the world.
Well, I'm just going to catch you for a minute in reaction, talk a little bit Big Ten because it is late and I got to get up early in the morning. Like I said, been busy, but I agree with you about that floor for Maryland at 2-7. I think a ceiling could be 6-3, splitting those best two. But honestly, realistically, I can see Maryland winning one of those games. And the one that highlights for me is that Penn State game. They get them at home. They play Syracuse. That one for me is a 50-50 coin flip. So, I don't think Maryland is going to do that bad next year, and I think they're a bowl team. But winning the Big Ten, come on. And I also find it funny that when a lot of people want to say these blatant terms, Ohio State, Michigan, overrated, they don't want to use any facts. They don't want to use any evidence on why they're overrated. It's just the gut feeling that they're not going to do anything every year, and yet we still see Ohio State and Michigan generally in the national conversation. So to call them overrated is just not accurate unless you can back it up with some evidence. People just don't back it up with evidence.
Yeah, so for Ohio State, that comment certainly holds true that they're typically selected to be one of the 5 best teams in the country, and they have been every year. Urban Meyer's been the coach generally. I know one season they finished at number 8, but let's keep it in perspective. They've been a top 5 team every year. Urban Meyer's been there. Now, Michigan, depending on what you consider to be their rating being overrated, yes, they have contended for the Big Ten championship. What I consider contention last year, and generally since Jim Harbaugh's been there, they have contended for the Big Ten championship, meaning they have played Ohio State for a trip to the Big Ten championship game as they did in 2018 and 16. And then if you go back to 2015, they were right there as well. So they've been in contention. Yeah, if it wasn't for the muff kick.
Punt, they would have, but yeah.
Well, if it wasn't for the muffed punt, Ohio State would have been in the Big Ten championship game and in the college football playoff.
Yeah, that's true. And that was, in my opinion, the most talented Ohio State team that Urban Meyer's had.
Absolutely.
One that didn't
I totally agree.
100%.
Till the last 2 games of the season when they blasted Michigan and Notre Dame.
Yeah. And trust me, that was their potential. they showed it. They were playing so mad. Anyway, so you were also talking about that 2-point conversion in which Maryland failed and Ohio State won, and you talked about how I would say 9 out of 10 times Ohio State would win that game, and probably about 7 out of 10 times they win convincingly. Not really a problem.
Sure.
But it kind of reminded me because I think it was either the week before or later that day when Oklahoma State played. The exact same thing happened. A missed opportunity. I think it was thrown behind Tylan Wallace.
Yes.
Was a receiver for Oklahoma State. The exact same thing happened with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And no one seemed to talk about that. And this is just a crazy thing about college football is any given Saturday, as you put it, we had 2 teams come inches away from pulling off massive upsets, and that means that debate between Oklahoma and Ohio State is not a debate, and we get the Georgia-Alabama rematch more than likely. It was just inches away from that chaos that everyone would like. But like I said, it's late. Just going to take a short bit of your time. Try to catch you another time. I'll see you later. Have a nice night. Thanks,
Bash. Appreciate it. Our good friend Bash, who has yet to comment or has not for quite some time. Good to hear from him. Bash Gaming. All right. So we've got Maryland's schedule. Talking a lot of Maryland football tonight. And let's look at the out-of-conference against Howard, Syracuse at home and at Temple. They probably go 2-1. They could go 3-0. They could go 1-2. Of course, the Howard game would be the one automatic win, you would think. Then they've got a bye week. Then they start in on the Big Ten. Penn State at home. I'll give them a 30 to 35% chance of winning that game. Rutgers on the road. They probably have a 80% chance of winning that game, at least. At Purdue. Maryland at Purdue. I will give them a 40 or 45% chance of winning that game. Indiana at home. Maybe a 60% chance of winning that game. At Minnesota. They play Minnesota again this year. They've got a 45 or 50% chance of winning that game at Minnesota. That's a toss-up. Michigan at home. What, a 10 or 15% chance of winning that game. At Ohio State, they've got a 5 or 10% chance of winning that game. They've got Nebraska at home. I'm going to say that they've got a 35 or 40% chance of winning that game. At Michigan State, maybe a 20, 25% chance of beating Michigan State in East Lansing. That concludes the season. All right. So if we play the odds here, they lose to Penn State. They beat Rutgers. They lose to Purdue. They beat Indiana. They're 2-2 in the Big Ten. They go to Minnesota. Toss up. Let's give them an MCD Sports for the nod here against the Golden Gophers and PJ Fleck on the road. They move it to 3-2 in the Big Ten. Then they lose to Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Michigan State, and they finish 3-6 in the Big Ten. And they go 2-1 non-conference, and there you go. Sounds like it's a 5-7 season again for Maryland. Is what I see right this second for the fine Terps under Mike Loxley. All right, folks, I wanted to dive into this live chat and see if you guys had anything good. I'm sure it's been lively, but too many calls. Cheryl! Hey, Cheryl. I have to hear all about Rich Rod, old Arizona team, talk about Arizona's team, Wildcats in something. I don't get it. Eli, they'll lose at Michigan State. Michigan State sucks. MCD Sports 4, 75% chance against Minnesota. No. They do not have a 75% chance of winning at Minnesota. They do not. MCD Sports 4, you're a young guy, but I want you to learn a lesson right now. It is good to have people in life that just tell you the way it is and just tell you, hey, You're wrong. Course correct. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to think. That when it comes to college football, I am that guy in your life. Eli's running down the wins against the Big Ten here. Eagle, anyone can beat anyone. Random thought I decided to type. Eagle! Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Let us know who you root for. And I enjoy seeing your comment here and how long you've been watching the channel. That's your big welcome. Okay. Loser. College football is too subjective. College sports in general, only sports that use rankings. Absolutely. Kimba. 3-31 for Bloxley. I just Googled it. 2-26 at New Mexico and 1-5 at Maryland. Yes. P. Digits. Ryan Reedley, careful what you ask for, whatever that. Maryland needs to work on their uniform game first. Yeah, it's a bit clownish. I shouldn't probably go backwards in the chat because then obviously I catch the responses first, but that's what I'm doing. Maryland, according to Charlie Sweeney. Charlie Sweeney. I've never seen your handle in any of the comments before. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Charlie, I appreciate you stopping by. Please make it a habit. You've locked in on the best discussion, debate, and conversation here on college football as we bring it to you each and every day. If you have yet to do it, check out the video library of over 7,000 videos. Join us on Patreon. We will have a great discussion there and viewer comment reaction. But hey, if you're just joining us, just keep it live right here locked in at YouTube. And again, would love to know who your favorite team is and how long you've been watching. D-Rev leave. Maryland is in a good area and have facilities. Maryland will beat Liberty. Okay, great. Maryland can be dangerous, but consistency is an issue. Loxley has work to do. 28-80-28. Good to see ya. Ryan hates the Ravens. Eli, Liberty could beat Maryland at basketball too. A lot of Maryland talk tonight, man. MCD Sports 4, you have revved up the audience. And I'm not just talking about D-Rev Lee. You're talking about everybody. You've revved us all up on Maryland football. Talking Terps tonight. Maryland. Liberty. All right. I can only go as far back as Deeper Rod's comment responding to somebody about OU. Cameron Parker. Cameron Parker. I don't believe you've ever commented to the channel. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Cameron, thanks so much for stopping by. Hopefully you have locked in with your subscription. Please like the videos, comment, and let us know what we can do for you in breaking down college football. But we believe we do it overall as good as anyone, better than anyone, with the best discussion, debate, and analysis from myself. And we also bring on top bloggers and broadcasters from the industry. Just Be Free. Just Be Free has just locked in with us here recently. So Just Be Free, I appreciate the contribution that you've made recently. I don't know where you came from, but you have joined here in the last, month, it seems. And you're locked in. Just Be Free. Add Iowa State, drop Rutgers because they eat corn and rival Iowa. Add Mizzou, drop Maryland because Maryland traffic sucks. That would be his recommendation for the Big Ten. All right. We have been on here for just about 2 hours. So thanks so much for joining the Voice of College Football. We enjoy the discussion, the debate, and the analysis. Please lock in. And if let's say you love college football and want to share the videos, that would be tremendous, especially to those fan bases that you're a part of, so that they can come in and enjoy the content as well. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I'm going to check out the live chat one more time, and we will see you very, very soon. I've got schedule rankings coming your way. We are up to number 67. And for somebody out there that requested a Colorado spring game recap, yes, I will deliver that very, very soon. See ya. See you guys later. Thanks for jumping on.